What's going on, everybody? Good afternoon, and we've got some Seattle Seahawks news here. A lot of this news is already close to a day old. A lot of this stuff was known yesterday evening, maybe even yesterday afternoon, but it's all kind of minor stuff just shifting around, so I didn't feel the need to rush out a video as soon as it happened or anything like that. But let's take a few minutes to talk about things, because while these moves individually don't really mean anything, they might be indicative of a bigger issue with the Seahawks roster right now. So going through it here, the first thing is the Seahawks signed a tight end. Got a tweet up here from Connor Benintendi, and he's passing along some information from Brady Henderson. Michael Ezeki. Michael Ezeki has been signed by the Seahawks, a tight end. And there's not a ton to say about Michael Ezeki. He played college football at UCLA under Chip Kelly these last few years. Last year was 2022, and it was also his best year in college football, which is not saying much. He had 20 catches and 4 touchdowns. And obviously, that was a UCLA team that had a pretty prolific offense, as they usually do with Chip Kelly. And they actually had a pretty strong team that year. So he was part of that aerial attack, but it was not a lot. And you can also see notably that other than the most recent college season he had, 2022, he's basically done nothing in his career. He had 12 catches in his freshman year, and then he did nothing for 2 straight years before having 3 catches in 2021. So 2022, he has his quote-unquote breakout year, which was not much. And then 2023, I think he latched on with the Chargers for a little bit, but never played it down. So now he's here. And on its own, that would probably be not particularly noteworthy. But then you had this also yesterday. The Seahawks signed another tight end. They signed another tight end, Pittsburgh State's very own Devon Garrison. Devon Garrison signed. And this guy's even harder to find stuff on, because his college is, I mean, it's not UCLA, I'll put it to you that way. And UCLA may not be a football powerhouse, but they are a Division 1A team. The Pittsburgh State Gorillas, yes, the Pittsburgh State Gorillas are a good deal below that. Now, I will say this, if you look at the numbers posted on the Pittsburgh State Gorillas website, you can see that he actually was relatively prolific there. 53 catches last year, 855 yards, 6 touchdowns. So, okay, he cooked a little bit, but it's Pittsburgh State. So, read into it as much as you want to on that level. Obviously, there isn't a ton that we can say here. I mean, he's got NFL size, I guess. He's 6'6", 240 pounds. So, he's not going to be completely out of place there. 240 is a little bit light, but if anything, by this point, you would think he'd be a little bit heavier, maybe like 245, just because that's typically what happens when a player is trying to go pro. So there's a little bit of credibility here. I mean, if you want to talk about size, Ezeki also has credible NFL size. But the important part about these two signings is not so much these players, because the odds of either guy making the team are very low. And if they do make the team, the odds of them doing anything are very, very low. So it's not so much about that, but we know that Noah Fant and Pharaoh Brown, and while we're at it, Jack Westover, currently battling through injuries. Fant has not played in the preseason yet. Pharaoh Brown suffered what seemed to be a major injury in the joint practices, and apparently it's not as bad as it looked, but it still could be bad. And Westover obviously was probably just a practice squad guy anyway, but I mean, he's still part of your tight end room, and at this point, with all these injuries, he might have actually been a little more relevant than he is now. So that is the part of this that is at least a little bit compelling. Does it indicate that there might be some bad stuff going on with those guys in particular? Obviously, Westover, not necessarily part of the equation here long term, because you know he's not making the roster no matter what. And Noah Fant, it feels like if he was seriously injured, we would have heard a little bit more about it by now. Pharaoh Brown is definitely the one to keep an eye on here. Pharaoh Brown is the one that may be significantly hurt to where we have to accept kind of a little bit of a setback going into the regular season here, if I had to guess. But the tight end injuries have kind of mounted here, and we picked up a couple of guys that very few of you have ever heard of. So does it really matter? Not necessarily, but if Noah Fant misses regular season time, that matters. If Pharaoh Brown misses regular season time, and at this point it seems like he will, that definitely matters. So this is kind of an indication that things aren't going great with at least one of those guys. And I really haven't gotten any indication from the Seahawks one way or the other about what Pharaoh Brown is looking at. And honestly, they've been pretty mum on Noah Fant as well. So if you're looking at these decisions and you're trying to read the tea leaves here, yeah, you might reasonably conclude that there might be a little something going on here, something not good. So hopefully we get some clear updates on these players' health in the next couple of days. All right, one other quick note while we're here, as long as we're talking about stuff happening at the very back of the roster. The Seahawks did work out a quarterback yesterday, Casey Bauman, former Chargers quarterback. And I couldn't find very much on him either because he was a player that went undrafted in the NFL draft and then went undrafted in the CFL draft. So there's not a ton here. He has a Wikipedia page. Started his college career at Montana State. He is local, by the way. He was born in Washington. Started at Montana State. Didn't work out there. He transferred to the Augustana Vikings in South Dakota. And basically he keeps getting hurt or keeps getting benched. Not really much of a college career until last year. Last year, he played in every game, passed for 2,900 yards, 29 touchdowns, 9 picks, ran for 5 touchdowns and 322 yards. So that was kind of his big breakout year. That's the only year where he was able to really play with consistency, play with any kind of a rhythm and feel to it, where it wasn't just like, oh, he played part of the season. He played a few games. He played half the games. That was the one season where he was able to put it all together. And he did play well, but he's playing for the Augustana Vikings. So it's not so much this particular player being interesting, but I do wonder if PJ Walker played so bad that the Seahawks now don't even really want him on their practice squad, because that was rough against the Titans. That was bad. Any scrap of competency would have probably won that game. Any scrap of competency would have looked better than that. And it's, I guess, entirely possible that the Seahawks are just like, we know that we're only carrying 2 quarterbacks, so PJ Walker was never going to make the team, but we want somebody a little bit more credible for the practice squad. I guess it's possible because he did look really bad out there. And PJ Walker's a veteran. Like, he shouldn't be looking that bad. It's one thing when you put a guy out there who's never played in the NFL and he looks terrible in a preseason game. That's one thing, right? Because that's that could be nerves. That could be just he's overwhelmed. That could be a lot of different things. But with somebody like PJ Walker who has started some games in the NFL, you shouldn't look that bad. So Casey Bauman might be getting in here. I mean, we got one preseason game left. You got to figure the third QB will play some. Maybe they want to get a look at somebody like this so they can make a call in a couple weeks on which guy goes to the practice squad, Bauman or Walker. I guess it's possible. We didn't sign him yet, so who knows? But that would be the way I try to evaluate that. And final note, this is just on the kind of news front here. McDonald did finally give a little bit more of a substantial update on Jerome Baker's current state of health. Jerome Baker's missed about 2 weeks now with a hamstring injury, and what McDonald said was still relatively soft and vague in terms of like a date. He didn't give a date. He admitted that he can't give you a date. He said he'll come back pretty soon, and the plan is to have him ready for week 1. So that's the plan. He doesn't really seem to indicate that he has a ton of confidence that plan is going to come to fruition. But he did say, yeah, for sure, after saying the plan is to have him ready for week 1, I guess. So if you want to play language doctor here, there's a few different things you could interpret there. But seems like he'll be back soon. And if he's not back soon, then it's time to worry because we need Jerome Baker. I know we like what Radigan's done in the preseason so far. Tyrese Knight has looked pretty good in the preseason so far, but yeah, this would be a big step down. Jerome Baker is a very good player. The person who would play for Jerome Baker would be not nearly as good, bottom line. All right, that's really about it for Seahawks news as of the recording of this video. If more stuff comes out later today, which is totally possible, we might get some injury updates that are a little more concrete very soon here. I'll say what needs to be said then. Until then, though, go Hawks. I'll see you guys a little bit later. Probably one more video coming today, maybe two. But either way, I'll see you later. And go Hawks.